We're back for your ears only. I'm Melissa Axelberth.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. It's porno, not art. That was a demonstrator outside a Moscow court agreeing with the 2-year sentences imposed on 3 young women whose Pussy Riot punk rock band gave an anti-Putin performance in a Russian Orthodox cathedral. Opponents of the penalty included entertainment celebrities worldwide and international chess master Garry Kasparov, who was among the local Kremlin critics taken away after the sentencing. Now this.
It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. It don't mean a thing. All you got to do is sing. It makes
Campaign advice from Duke Ellington. It's become conventional wisdom that a small segment of swing voters can be key to presidential elections in an era when so many Americans are polarized partisans or politically turned off by all the others who are. Some see the addition of conservative Paul Ryan to the Republican ticket making it much harder for Mitt Romney to appeal to those independent and swing voters. But others say that target group is now so small that both parties would do better maximizing efforts to get their more and less committed base voters out on election day.
To consider the importance of swing voters to election 2012 and the factors that make those voters swing, for your ears only, we're joined by Linda Killian, senior scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington and a columnist for Politico, U.S. News and World Report, and Politics Daily. Her timely new book is The Swing Vote, The Untapped Power of Independence from St. Martin's Press. Welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with statistics. What proportion of the electorate classifies itself as independent and thus potential swing voters?
40%. According to Gallup, Pew, many reliable people who poll the voters, 40% of all American registered voters call themselves independent. Some states call it undeclared, unaffiliated, but they're not Republicans or Democrats. And that's a bigger group than either Republicans or Democrats right now.
On the other hand, past studies have shown that the vast majority of independents lean Democrat or Republican and actually end up voting that way. So what percentage do you judge is really likely to be swung in this year's campaign?
Yeah, I take issue. I don't think any studies have shown a vast majority of this group. What I say is that in using academic research, exit polling, there are leaners, and this is, of course, what the partisans and the pundits love to talk about, the leaners. There aren't really independent voters. How could anyone be independent? The whole nation is polarized. In fact, there are. And I put the number at about half of all independent voters, or about 20% of the overall electorate, as true independent swing voters that mix up their ballots, vote for Republicans and Democrats, swing from election to election. And I think you can sort of prove this by the swing in election results. If there weren't swing voters, our results would be the same according to who identifies with each party. But you see vast swings from 2006 to 2010.
Do you think the addition of Paul Ryan to the Romney ticket makes attracting those swing voters more or less important than mobilizing each party's base?
You know, I don't know yet. I think it would really be speculation on my part. I think the jury is out on Paul Ryan. Of this 20% that I think are truly swing voters and who maybe a big chunk of those aren't sure how they're going to vote in November, I think they're going to watch the conventions, listen to the speeches. They're going to watch the debates. I think the vice presidential debate will be very entertaining this time around. And I think they are open to thinking about it. I think most of them don't know who Paul Ryan is. I think the Democratic Party did a masterful job at painting him as a demon and a scary person. And for people that didn't really know who he was yet. But I think what I do know is that Pew polling shows that for independent voters, like, virtually all voters, jobs and the economy are their top 2 issues. But for independent voters, they care about the budget deficit much more so than Democratic voters. So I think they will be open to an argument about how we deal with some of our serious fiscal problems. And I also write for The Atlantic quite often and have a piece posting next week on Congress and did a piece on Paul Ryan. And what I said was, let's hear the Democratic plan. It's not enough to say that Paul Ryan's plan is terrible and cruel and mean. Let's hear what the Democrats would do to address some of our serious fiscal problems.
But what about personality for swing voters who don't have party loyalties that sort of overweigh the particular individual candidate to keep them in line, but are affected by, for instance, Ryan's personality, Romney's somewhat chronic foot and mouth condition? Without the party loyalty, are they more affected by those gaffes and gotchas?
I don't think so. I think, the cliche, of course, in American politics is the more likable candidate, the candidate you want to have a beer with. I do think that's a factor. What I would say is that it's a little more substantive than that. It's the candidate you trust and the candidate that you think is being honest and genuine. And I heard this over and over from independent swing voters. And this is what I think we can attribute some of Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey's popularity in a pretty democratic state to. Independent swing voters, like a lot of voters, are hungry for authenticity.
Tell us in which key states you conducted your research and how many folks you actually spoke with.
I picked 400 of people, both independent swing voters, partisans, elected officials. I did focus groups, attended political events in 2010, visited college campuses, called people up, obtained voter lists, which are public records, called people up on the phone. I picked 4 key swing states, which I picked these in 2010. I think I did a good job because I think they're all very much in play this time. Colorado, Ohio, New Hampshire, and Virginia. And I identified and described 4 key demographic groups in the swing vote. Starbucks moms and dads, the suburban voters, NPR Republicans, socially moderate, fiscally conservative Republicans, they used to be called Rockefeller Republicans, America First Democrats, we've known these in the past as Reagan Democrats, and the Facebook generation, voters under 35 who are registered as independents in a higher percentage than any other age group. And I saw an interesting statistic about that group recently, about 40% of young voters being open to the idea of voting for Mitt Romney. I think conventional wisdom is that young voters are pretty, for the most part, safe Democratic voters or they stay home. But what I heard from young voters is they're socially libertarian. They don't think social issues like gay marriage or abortion really belong in the public sphere, but they've seen tough economic times, getting a job, dealing with student loans, and they're open to a more fiscally conservative message.
Linda Killian is a senior scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington and a columnist for Politico, U.S. News and World Report, and Politics Daily, also lindakillian.com, and on Twitter @LindaKillian. Her timely new book is The Swing Vote, The Untapped Power of Independence from St. Martin's Press.
We have a quote from the news. A reasonable, non-discriminatory, non-severe burden when viewed in the broader context. That was Judge Robert Simpson of Pennsylvania refusing to block a new state requirement for picture ID to vote, given so many such photo ID requirements. Supporters plan to appeal before Election Day.
Next, the heat-drought food connection for your ears only.